Dong Zhuo's state included many generals and officials, but this video will focus on Dong Min, Dong Bai, Hua Xiong, Li Ru, Niu Fu, and will also explore the conflicting recordings surrounding Diao Chan. Niu Fu served under Dong Zhuo in Liang province before his rise to power at the capital, and it is not recorded, but I assume Dong Zhuo's younger brother, Dong Min, wasn't too far away either. Niu Fu was trusted by his lord, and in time married his unnamed daughter, thus becoming Dong Zhuo's son-in-law. In the year 189, Jin was in a feud for power against the eunuch faction, and needed assistance, so sent letters to various warlords asking for help. Dong Zhuo led his army and his younger brother Dong Min to Luoyang, but Jin was assassinated by the eunuchs before they arrived. Jin's troops, outraged at the death of their lord, revolted, and began attacking the palace. As the He family owed their high status to the eunuchs, a subordinate of the late Jin suspected his half-brother, He Miao, of sympathizing with the eunuchs. The subordinate officer then asked the soldiers if they would seek revenge on the one responsible, to which they replied, "We will give our lives for it." Together with the help of Dong Min, they went and killed He Miao, who had actually turned against the eunuchs himself and wanted them killed as well, but the subordinate still saw this as a failure to protect his half-brother, and so still led the men against him. He Miao's body was dumped in a park. Later on, after Dong Zhuo deposed of the emperor and was uncontested, he had He Miao's corpse dug up, ordered for his bones and joints to be broken, before leaving him to rot on the side of the road. It's also mentioned that Dong Zhuo had He Miao's mother killed, and also threw her body on some brambles in a park. It could be a coincidence, or maybe it was done in order to display their bodies for all to see. In an attempt to flee the capital, the eunuchs had led Liu Ban, Emperor Shao, and his younger brother, Liu Zi, outside the city to escape, but came to a dead end at a riverbank. Liu Zi quickly led some men to rescue them, and began escorting them back to the capital. But they were soon intercepted by Dong Zhuo and his 3,000 Liang warriors. Emperor Shao was either shocked or intimidated into silence, and could not answer Dong Zhuo's questions about the events in the capital. His younger brother, who was soon to become Emperor Xian, however, could clearly recall the events, and impressed Dong Zhuo with his answers. This is where Dong Zhuo first got the idea to depose of Emperor Shao and replace him with his younger brother, as he saw him as more competent. Each step Dong Zhuo took to consolidate his power also isolated himself from the other regional warlords. His granddaughter, Dong Bai, was allowed to have her adulthood ceremony early, granting her titles and lands at a very young age. Normally this ceremony was held at age 20 for men and 15 for women. Zhu Jun was outraged, as she had a special platform built for her. It was 139 centimeters long, and she rode in a blue-covered golden carriage with thousands of soldiers marching behind her. Her uncle, Dong Huang, personally handed her the seal and titles. Dong Huang's father, who is Dong Zhuo's brother, is also called Dong Zhuo. On one occasion, Dong Zhuo almost dirtied his sword with Yuan Shao after an argument, which forced him to flee, before scaring Liu Zi to flee for his life as well, and go and live in seclusion. As Dong Zhuo's power became uncontested, he deposed of Emperor Shao for Emperor Xian. Yuan Shao's uncle, Yuan Wei, removed the emperor's seal and ribbon, where it was said that the entire court was silent. Dong Zhuo appointed Niu Fu as a general of the household and sent him to attack the White Wave bandits at Heidong Commandery, but he failed in his mission. Dong Min was then appointed as the general of the left. Dong Zhuo's army were allowed to break into the upper-class houses at Luoyang and take what they pleased: gold, silk, even the noble women and daughters. On one occasion, Dong Zhuo sent his armies to pillage a county within Yuan Shu's territory. There was a ceremony taking place, but upon arrival the soldiers beheaded all the males, tied the women and girls up before loading them onto carts and shipping them back to Luoyang. When they returned, the soldiers were singing and cheering, claiming that they had just beaten some bandits and that the women and children were prisoners. Some were handed out to the soldiers as concubines and wives, whilst the ones that were not desired had their heads set alight, where they were burned to death. Shortly after this, Dong Zhuo sent Emperor Xian west and removed all prestigious and powerful people from the city. This was done by confiscating their property, wealth, and women, before having them all killed. Dong Zhuo's horsemen and foot soldiers then herded the remaining millions of people to Chang'an. Starving and forced to keep moving, many of them resorted to crime to survive the journey. The confusion in this forced relocation led to piled-up corpses clogging the roads of Luoyang. Dong Zhuo then burnt down all palaces, temples, government offices, and private houses. It said not even a dog or chicken remained. Lu Bu was then sent to raid the past emperor's tombs to collect the treasures that they were buried with. It wasn't long before the anti-Dong Zhuo coalition was formed in the year 190 in retaliation to his actions. 1 month into the fighting, and Dong Zhuo feared the coalition would reinstate Liu Bian as Emperor Shao, so he ordered Li Ru to force the prince into committing suicide. Li Ru allowed Liu Bian to spend some time with his wife and concubines, where he had one of them play his favourite song. Li Ru then presented him a bowl of poisoned wine. As the war waged on, Niu Fu stationed his army throughout the mountain passes that led into Luoyang. At around the same time, many independent horsemen and foot soldiers had turned up to harass Sun Jian's army, who were having a drinking party east of Luoyang city. When the partying soldiers noticed the horsemen in the distance, they looked to Sun Jian, who didn't seem bothered. They thought nothing of it, and all continued passing drinks around. When more riders turned up, Sun Jian calmly ordered his men to take their posts in the city in an orderly manner. Many of them wouldn't have even suspected the looming cavalry was an unannounced enemy force. When they were back inside, he explained to them why he acted so calmly, as he didn't want them to panic and trample each other. Dong Zhuo successfully defended his position from 2 directions. Xu Rong scored a victory against Sun Jian on the eastern front, where he almost lost his life. After Sun Jian's great defeat here, many of his men were captured and boiled alive. Dong Zhuo's attention was then focused on Wang Huang, who had been sent by Yuan Shao along the Yellow River. In this time, Niu Fu was ordered to supply the fortress of Mei with 30 years' worth of rations. This gave Sun Jian time to regroup his army, and he soon came back for another attack. Dong Zhuo sent 5,000 horsemen and footmen to intercept them. Lu Bu led the cavalry, Hu Zhen led the troops along with Hua Xiong, who only held a lowly rank. Lu Bu and Hu Zhen argued a lot and could not get along in this battle. They launched a 3-way attack onto Sun Jian, but his fortified position left them completely routed, whereafter he continued on towards Luoyang. Lu Bu and Hu Zhen fled, but Hua Xiong, who was presumably on the front lines, was either killed in battle or executed by Sun Jian afterwards. Historically, Hua Xiong only participated in this one battle, and did not fight at Shui Pass as there was no battle there. He is never described as talented or promising, and obviously was killed by Sun Jian's forces, not Guan Yu. At the same time that Yuan Shu refused to send supplies to Sun Jian, Li Jue was sent as an emissary to broker peace with him. Li Jue offered Sun Jian and his sons high-ranking positions in the government, to which Sun replied, "Dong Zhuo opposes heaven and defies the law. Until I have killed you and all your clan, and show your heads to the 4 seas, I shall not be able to die in peace. How can I ally with you?" Well rested and with fresh supplies, Sun Jian relentlessly fought his way towards Luoyang, routing Dong Zhuo's unit at the Emperor Tombs outside the city, before defeating Lu Bu's unit inside the city. Dong Zhuo fled the ruined city and stationed at Mianqi. Sun Jian pursued him by splitting his force up and sending them towards a couple counties including Mianqi, in order to threaten Dong Zhuo's position. Niu Fu was among the officers sent by Dong Zhuo to block Sun Jian's advance, to allow Dong Zhuo time to form a retreat to Chang'an. As Sun Jian was aware that Luoyang was open to a counterattack, he decided to call off the pursuit. By this point, he had repaired the destroyed tombs, found the imperial seal, and seized Luoyang. But as the coalition leaders were unaware that Emperor Xian was still alive, they soon started pursuing their own interests, which led to infighting as they argued over who should become the next emperor. Sun Jian soon withdrew his forces, as did Dong Zhuo. The coalition now existed in name only, and Dong Zhuo's tyranny continued until the schemes of Wang Yun, Li Su, and Lu Bu brought an end to his reign. Niu Fu tried to avenge his father-in-law, and managed to defeat Li Su in the city, forcing him to retreat. Dong Min and others loyal to Dong Zhuo were executed, with their heads put on display around the city. This demoralizing act would have contributed to Niu Fu's unit deserting him until he only had about 5 or 6 men left. When he ordered them to grab anything of value and to flee with him, one subordinate of his, Hu Che, clearly didn't take kindly to this order, and instead beheaded Niu Fu and sent it to Dong Zhuo at Chang'an. According to one scholar named Meng Fan Ren, Diao Chan was a real person in history. He claims she lived in Muji village in Shaanxi province, and her real name was Ren Hong Chang. He says that in that village marks an engraving written Diao Chan's hometown. There is also a temple and a tomb built to honour her. Lu Bu did have an affair with one of Dong Zhuo's concubines, although there is no evidence her name was Diao Chan. Some argue that her name refers to the jade decorations atop high-ranking officials' hats, and so the name Diao Chan would not be uncommon for a housemaiden. But at the same time, others say that the name Diao was not and is not a common Chinese family name. An argument could be made that her character exists to add a bit of romance to the romance of the Three Kingdoms. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.